This camera is a Pentax K1000. It's known as the choice of photographic course at colleges, and often it used to be put out on the useful information sheet that students would go out and source a camera. This was one of the top models. Why? Because it only had two things you could take off of the camera. One was the small silver oxide battery known as SR44 from that hatch there, and the other was the bayonet mount lens. Everything else stayed on the camera, everything else was manual, so there was nothing to distract the student, and as a result of that it lasted far longer than any other in production. It sold over 2 million models to the world and lasted from 74 through till 97. So the Pentax, its mount, that's what the lens attached itself to the body with, was called the K mount, or the Pentax K bayonet, and it is probably the most prolific in the world. All sorts of rebranded cameras and other camera manufacturers such as Ricoh, Cosina used to license the K mount for themselves, so you could often find hundreds of lenses in such places like Dixon, the high store retail group, that would fit a Pentax without the Pentax name on it. It would have some other name on it, but very, very useful to know. And that bayonet has continued through into their DSLR, albeit slightly modified with electrical connections. You can fit this lens here onto the modern day digital SLR from Pentax, and in fact you can fit this lens, which is known as the 50mm SMC f2 lens. You can fit this on any digital SLR camera if you can find an adapter from China to do that. It will be manual, you won't have the autofocus facility that you have on your swanky lenses, but the lens quality itself is important. What it sees, the picture it takes, albeit how you get to it is different. You will have to manually focus and select your own diaphragm. That's the size of the opening the light is going to come in through, and you will obviously need to make sure the camera has a setting on it. This is the digital camera that allows use with a manual lens, but as far as mating the two together, this lens and any lens that has the Pentax K bayonet fit will go onto a modern day DSLR, either directly in the case of Pentax itself or via an adapter, and you will have a larger range of lenses to look through if you go for a Pentax K than any other, I suggest. So this particular camera, choice of students, choice of colleges to teach their photographic courses on, come from a design 1974-ish, when moment. Please, I'm in the middle of a film shoot. Just give me 2-3 minutes, please. So this evolved from what was known as the Spotmatic, or the Pentax Spotmatic model, which looked more or less the same, except that it had, instead of a bayonet clink click, it had a screw lens, M42 thread, and it screwed on, and you can get some fantastic glass from those, and you can get adapters for them to fit them on DSLR as well. So, but that was the evolve path from the Spotmatic model through to this, and then next one I think was KM, Pentax KM, which the only difference really was you could hold the mirror up and it had a faster shutter speed. It went up to something like 2000 per second. And then onto the later Pentax models, which were the ME and MX versions, which were very smaller, looked the same colouring pattern, and carried the same lens range, but much smaller, and with a small pancake lens on. That's one that's about half the size of this. You could quite easily fit it in a jacket pocket. So we have manual only. The only thing that you can do for this is change the speed shutter here. On the film select here you can change the ISO, so when you read the 35mm film cassette it would tell you this is 100 ASA or this is 400 ASA, and you would effect a change on that. And then you had the aperture ring around the lens, and absolutely cracking simple camera, 600 grams without the lens. It's like a hammer, solid. Throughout its production run it shifted from being made in Japan, and this one says made in Japan on the bottom, and it went to Hong Kong first, and then from 94 until end of production run 97 it went to China proper. The Hong Kong models and the China models are all well put together, well built, use more plastic, and you can tell them because they don't have the AHO sign, which is on top of the prism housing, and they also don't have the Asahi above the brand name Pentax. So you'll just get Pentax K1000, and that isn't necessarily bad, it's just that they use more plastics in it, and so obviously the life of the camera is not going to be the same as a fully metal item like the original Pentax K1000. So it's an SLR. What does that mean? Well, unlike some of the smaller rangefinder cameras that had a separate viewing window here and caused something called parallax, which is like a railway track. If you used to get a child to draw a railway track, they would always start off on the paper with the wide end, and then in the distance the two rails would be very close to each other. And that is the same as parallax. When you're looking through a rangefinder camera, and not one of these cameras, you don't see what the lens is seeing, you see what your eye is seeing, and the lens records something slightly different onto the film plane. So with this sorted that out, this single lens reflex, with the aid of a prism or a waist level finder, which is something I'll discuss later but not today. The prism allowed you to look through and see what the lens was seeing, and see also what the film would see, and by doing that through a prism onto a mirror and out. Now your speed setting, your aperture setting and your film speed setting are the only ways you can control the outcome of the picture on this. And if I put this down for a second and just show you, you can control by that ring on the lens the size of the hole, how much light is going to come through, and then with your shutter you can control the speed on the top plate. So you decide you want this size, and you then decide the shutter speed. It can be slow or it can be fast. Those two items plus the film speed, which you set on the top before you start shooting, ensure that the film negative gets the required amount of light that is shown by a simple needle in the viewfinder display, which is powered by that battery. Now you don't need it if you know your Sunny F16 rule, Sunny 16 rule. You'll know that 125 of a second, 125th of a second, and f8 will get you through most sunny days fairly fast. It captures small pets, children rushing around the garden, and it also gives you enough light that a sunny day will give you. And you know that with this same rule, the sunny 16 rule, that if you go down to f5, which is a larger aperture, you're allowed more light in for a gloomy day, etc. So you don't need the match needle to show you where and how correct your settings are if you're confident enough. And with these, they will be quite good pictures, slightly dark, slightly light, or spot on. They will still look fantastic. Very, very big film negative, far bigger than any of these small cameras or mobile phone chips that you are taking pictures on. So they can be good, and it's quite good fun to take them out once in a while and check what you've actually done in the processing stage. Okay, so you've got a hot shoe for a flash with electrical contact in. You've got a winding unit, and you have to manually load the film cassette by opening this rear back. It will go this way, placing the cassette in, taking the spool out and placing it into the shutter spool. There's slots in that, placed it in, and then winding it forward without putting the lid back twice. Activate the shutter to wind it each time, and then place the back down and wind it on once more, fire it, and then your next negative that you've pulled from the film cassette will be correctly set up for the first shoot that you do. And that is all you need to know about Pentax K1000, fully manual, and doesn't even need a battery to work, and it will take 35, 36 pictures quite easily, and then you go to somewhere like Tesco's or Costco and get them developed, and there you go. Good fun, fantastic quality because the lenses are fantastic. And if you want to do street shooting, don't worry about these Lomo style cameras that are now made in complete plastic, including the lens. Give yourself a go on this. Buy one of these for 20, 30, 40 pounds, complete with lens, and give it a whirl. Okay.